Hello and welcome back. Once again, I'm sitting down with my uncle to talk about his career, and today we're talking about Operation Lunar Eclipse. So how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jonathan. How are you?
I'm doing great. So, do you want to give us a brief overview before we get in about what Operation Lunar Eclipse is and what it has to pertain with?
Sure. In 1998, we were having a run of con artists selling bogus moon rocks. There was Richard Keith Mountain. There was Brian and Ronald Truckerman. And they were either selling them at an auction house in the case of the Truckermans or worldwide in the case of Richard Keith Mountain, United States, Canada, Australia. And this was not a new problem that NASA dealt with. Beginning in 1969, when Apollo 11 returned, there were actually door to door salesmen in Miami selling bogus moon rocks for a bargain price of $5 a rock. And people were buying them because, hey, if it's the real thing, that's a pretty good purchase.
So they were just
And
going door to
so
door.
the door-to-door salesman. They were selling vacuum cleaners and moon rocks. And so the whole purpose of Operation Lunar Eclipse, which I sketched out during a hearing for the astronaut impersonator Jerry Allen Whitridge, was to basically get the con artists to come to us. We weren't looking for real moon rocks. We didn't even know there was a problem with missing moon rocks. We knew there was a problem with con artists. And so, sitting, waiting around for Jerry Whitridge's fake attorney to show up, the President of the United States, William Jefferson Clinton, I'm literally sketching out John's estate sales. We need a hello line, dedicated line for it. We need a P.O. box to give the impression of an address. Uh, I decided to pick a guy that I worked with in Operation Lunar Eclipse and also worked with in a case involving the sale of bogus seats on a non existent rocket ship. Bob Krieger, U.S. Postal Service. And we, together, we came up with this scheme to basically get the con artists to come to us. I had
So
NASA produce a advertisement that would be placed in USA Today showing an astronaut jumping on the moon with moon rocks wanted. And the Postal Inspection Service paid for the ad to go into the USA Today paper. And we did that on September 18th, 1998. And then the rest is history. And I'm sure you're going to ask a few questions about that.
before we get back to the moon rocks, they were selling seats on a shuttle or a rocket.
Oh, yeah. We actually have a confidential settlement on that thing, so I can't really get into it too much. But I will tell you that Krieger and I flew all over the United States, even to Alaska, interviewing these astronauts that were buying seats on this rocket ship and were paying money and going around calling themselves astronauts and the whole 9 yards.
It's insane.
And it was an interesting case. And but that's history now, and another
We'll move
case.
on.
But ask about Operation Lunar Eclipse.
So, at this point in time, you didn't think there was an issue with real moon rocks being missing or sold. You thought it was all forgeries.
I was shocked. You know, if you go to Johnson Space Center, I was stationed there. They've got a safe where they keep their moon rocks. I mean, it's not safe, but a secure room, and you can't get in there unless you're wearing a jump outfit and you're basically you have scrubs the whole 9 yards. There's a camera on you. There's all kinds of security. And so I knew that NASA treated its moon rocks as a national treasure. We had two stockpiles of moon rocks. Had one at Johnson Space Center, and we also had one at Brooks Air Force Base that was moved over to white sands. And the bottom line is, I knew that we loaned out moon rocks. I knew that we gifted moon rocks. But I didn't know that anybody that received a moon rock would actually lose custody of it. And because of Operation Lunar Eclipse, we learned the truth. And the truth was that over half the moon rocks that we gifted to the nations of the world were missing. And even moon rocks that we gifted to U.S. governors for their states were brought home by the governors to their homes or given away. And three that I'm thinking of right now are Governor Vanderhoof of Colorado, Governor Arch Moore of West Virginia, and Governor Kit Bond of Missouri. And so in each case, I don't think they were up to any shenanigans or anything like that, but they just did not realize that, hey, this is the property of the state that you represent, not your personal property. And part of it was that when we were gifting these moon rocks out, we did not stress enough the need for security and exactly what was required for the moon rocks.
You would imagine, though, that something as rare as rocks from another planet, another source, you would imagine there'd be some care. It would go without saying, like, take care of this. It's kind of irreplaceable.
Well, what I found out, and of course, we're getting off of Operation Lunar Eclipse, but that's fine. What I found out was that the nations did not have an inventory control system, neither did the states, for these moon rocks. So you give a plaque in the case of the Apollo 17, or a stand in the case of the Apollo 11, to these different nations, 135 nations, again, 50 states and the territories. And you don't tell them, hey, look, this is something that somebody might want to steal. This is something that's kind of a one-of-a-kind item and has a great value. And in fact, in Operation Lunar Eclipse, when I found out that we were dealing with a real moon rock, the first thing I did was I approached NASA personnel and I said, hey, look, guys, I've got guys selling me 1.142 grams of lunar rock, 10 by 14 inch plaque, the flag of the recipient country, and two metal plates. And he's asking $5 million for it. Is this reasonable? Because if it's not reasonable, I'm not going to be negotiating with the guy for something that's just, off the planet. And the people I talked to said it's a one-of-a-kind item. Nobody's allowed to own it. You can trace it back to the actual mission, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, or 17 that went to the moon, because the different soils were different in the different locations. And with the plaque itself self-authenticating, yeah, it's worth $5 million, or would not be surprised that it's worth $5 million. And so, that is the reality. Each one of these governors, each one of these heads of state, like Gaddafi, was given an Apollo 11 and an Apollo 17 moon rock, each reasonably valued at $5 million on the black market. And by the way, surprise, surprise, Colonel Gaddafi's moon rocks are missing.
So you went in, like you were saying, in looking specifically for fake moon rocks, the cat scammers.
Totally fake. We did not even envision that somebody would approach us with the real thing. And so just to kind of walk through the timeline, if I could.
Yeah.
September 18th, we put the ad in USA Today. Quarter-page ad. There's a backstory to that because the Attorney General of Arizona, one of them, wanted us to pull the ad on the day that it was supposed to be put in there because of the Richard Keith Mountain case. He didn't want to have that mess up with him. And unfortunately, we could not kill that ad, so it went in, thank God. And, Richard Keith Mountain was dealing with bogus moon rocks, and what we got was the real thing. And so the ad went in, and it was kind of silence for a while. And now I want to back up for a second just to give you an idea of the surroundings that we were in. I was in building 265. It was a SCIF. SCIF is a high security facility where they keep top secret material. In my case, we kept records pertaining to the OmniPlan case and other cases, and to include grand jury documents. But it was, you had to go through a safe door to get into the building. Then you had safes throughout the building, and you had this little room across from my office, which had a cipher lock. And in the little room, we put in a dedicated hello line, only actionable for that case. We wouldn't answer for any other case. And right next to that, we had a tape recorder. And so I'm sitting in my office, which is, if you can imagine, it's like a miniature warehouse because that's where we keep all the grand jury documents. And I'm sitting back there and the phone rings. And this was on September 30th. Get the message. We actually returned the call. And I said, hey, look, this is Tony Coriaso. That was my undercover name. Had used it before in a previous case that wasn't compromised. And I said, and the guy said, hi, my name is Alan Rosen. I understand that you're hunting for a moon rock. I said, absolutely. Yeah. Or words to that effect. He said, I've got the real thing. And you know, all those other calls that you're getting? Yeah, they're bogus. He said, I've got something that is, worth a lot of money, and I'm the only one that probably has it. It has something like this. And he got my attention, and he said, but I'm thinking that's what any con artist would probably say. And so,
I mean, no one's going to admit to selling a bogus moon rock.
Yeah, hey, I got this bogus moon rock. Don't believe me; it's a lie. Of course, they're going to give a backstory, but he gave me this elaborate web page address. And I said, okay, well, let me take a look at the web page. Click it in, and you had to be exact back then because the addresses were very long. You had to have every symbol correct. Pops up on the screen. A 10 by 14-inch plaque, the flag of the recipient country, a lucite ball containing a moon rock, and 2 metal plates. And I'm kicking back going like, dear God, this is the real thing. We've got a real moon rock. How did that happen? Now, it's important that you understand how that picture appeared. In the center of the flag, it was blocked off. You could not see the symbol that was in the center of the flag. And the name of the recipient country was blocked off as well. And here's something else I did not know at that time. In Central and South America, there's 6 countries with the identical flag, except for the center. So he's saying to me, essentially, it's one of these 6 countries. I'm not going to tell you which. Got it? And so I said, well, I know how to take care of this. We'll get on the phone. We'll find out which country's missing a moon rock. The only problem was that most of the countries that we contacted didn't even know they had received a moon rock. They didn't know it was missing because they didn't know they received it. And we realized at that point there was a problem. NASA had no requirement for the governments that they gifted the moon rocks to that they tell NASA what they did with them. And so the bottom line is we knew that these recipient countries were missing. For example, Nicaragua was missing both its Apollo 11 and Apollo 17 moon rock, identical flag. The Apollo 11 moon rock was stolen by the Contras, brought to a neighboring country and sold to a Baptist minister. The Baptist minister goes to meets with a casino owner from Las Vegas who buys the Nicaraguan Apollo 11 moon rock and actually displays it. Again, Nicaragua didn't even know they were missing the moon rock because they didn't have an inventory control system. Honduras, We later found out was the one that was missing that particular Apollo 17 moon rock.
So a bunch of countries just took them as gifts and then never logged them.
Now, yeah, I can tell you million stories. Uh, California's Apollo 17 moon rock. Nobody knew where it was. Uh, and one of the reasons why they didn't know where it was the plaque that it was on burned up in the 1970s. And they put the lucite ball, which is impervious to fire, on a little stand, and nobody has a clue what it is. I get the state museum system, Parks and Recreation Department actually, to look at all the different museums in the state, and we finally tracked it down. No idea. It's been sitting there for years. Nobody has a clue what it is, and that just is illustrative. That is, if I can pronounce the word, that is a clue to the problems that they were having.
Is it so?
Hawaii. Let me give you another one. Hawaii.
Oh,
I have a student hunt down the Hawaiian Apollo 11 and 17 moon rock. Uh, Nobody knows where it's at. He finds the wrong moon rock. It's one on loan down there. I said, no, that's not the right one. And then I thought I'd do him a favor and find the moon rock for him. And I traced it back to the governor's office as the last person that actually saw it. Called the governor's office and they said, no, we don't have any moon rocks here. I said, well, we've checked every other place in the state. And some years ago, you did have the moon rocks there. He goes, no, we don't. What happened was they changed parties in Hawaii. And so the Republican governor leaves, Democratic governor comes in, and the moon rocks are put in storage. Nobody knew the moon rocks were in their inventory. Nobody knew that they were in storage. Anybody could have taken them away. Nobody would have missed them. And then finally they did a search and they found both their Apollo 11 and 17 moon rocks. But that gives you an idea of, the fact that it was haphazard. There was really a problem with accountability.
so it seems like the problem was both U.S. states and other countries who received gifts and then never logged them. Is that common practice to not catalog things that
No,
you receive?
the United States is big about every gift they receive, they put it into an inventory control system. But the states and the foreign governments were not as big on that. Of course, there have been moon rocks have been outright stolen from museums and so forth. Delaware's Apollo 11 moon rock was stolen. Uh, um, Malta's Apollo 17 moon rock was stolen. But most of them, nobody has a clue where they were. Again, with those three governors, they just brought them home. With respect to Governor turned President Clinton, his moon rock ended up in his gubernatorial records files, and nobody had an idea that they were there until a search was conducted, and they found the rock and the plaque separate, put them together, and there you go. But there were a lot of in North Carolina. They found a moon rock in a desk drawer. Nobody had a clue why it was there. In one of the island nations, they found the moon rock in a shoebox. And with respect to the West Virginia moon rock that I mentioned before, the Apollo 70, which my student Sandra Shelton hunted down, that was found in a garage. And the governor took it home, gave it to his law partner. The law partner died. Everything goes to the brother of the law partner. He doesn't know what it is. He just has it in the garage. Louisiana's Apollo 17 moon rock was found in a garage sale. So they're just story after story like this. And again,
Worth
each
$5 million
one on
dollars.
black, huh?
They're worth like
Yeah,
$5
$5
million
million.
dollars, and
And,
someone
and
was
the
selling it
funny
at a
thing, the guy that bought the Louisiana one wanted to scrape off the moon rock and refurbish the plaque and use it for something else. And so, if he had his way, he would have thrown the moon rock in the trash. The Irish, their Apollo 11 moon rock ended up in a trash dump. They had a fire in a observatory, and they scooted out all the stuff. The plaque was actually intact, but they did, they're just get rid of the stuff, and they threw it, and it ended up in the Finglas dump. And I talked to the Irish about that. The media guy called me up, and I said, "Yeah, it's in the Finglas dump down there. One of you guys in the '70s threw it away, and so what I was told later was that they had kind of a little mini rush down to the dump where there were Irishmen digging for, and the way I like to say it, and that your grandmother and my mother was Irish, so I'm not being offensive to them, but they were hunting for a little pot of gold, so that was long and short of that.
So back to Operation Lunar Eclipse. This guy calls you and he gives you access to the website. And you
Yep.
see the plaque with the flag on it, but he blurs it out. Is there a reason why he didn't take the flag and the plaques just off? Why he just blurred them?
Well, I think he wanted to make us realize that it was legit. And he
Oh,
figured there
okay.
were 6 countries, and so that would be enough of a confusion so we wouldn't know what country. And so the bottom line was that we started to negotiate with him. And this went on for about 2 months. And
And by this point,
and
I'm
he said he
sorry,
had to come.
but by this
Go
point, you
ahead.
know that there's other countries now missing as well. Like, because you
Yeah,
did research
and
that
that's
one.
actually a story that comes into play after everything's done
Okay, well
because
then I'll let you go.
okay, so anyhow, I'm negotiating with Alan Rosen. We're going back and forth, and my name again is Tony Coriasso. Bob Krieger's name was John Martin. I was named after my uncle Coriasso and my brother-in-law Tony. Bob Krieger was named after Marta, who was the chief auditor of the Omniplan case. And you always have to have a name when you're undercover that you can remember. Because if it's not, it doesn't roll off your tongue, you're going to screw up. And so usually they say use your first name and then a made up last name. But Tony Coriasso was comfortable enough for me, so I used that. Uh, Years before, I had actually investigated a mafia family when I used Tony Coriasso. And your great uncle, my uncle, was a proud Italian, brilliant guy, doctor, who did not believe in the mafia. He thought it was just an Italian slur. And so I thought, boy, this would be a cool name to use. First of all, I know no Coriasso would have anything to do with the mafia, and it's not a very common name. And so that's I used that previously, and I used it again in Operation Lunar Eclipse, and it was a comfortable name for me. So, bottom line, I'm digressing. So I work out the guy tells me he wants $5 million, or he could cut up the rock and give me a piece of the rock. The last thing I want him to do is cut up the rock, and the last thing I want him to do is not give me the plaque. I want the whole shebang. And so he says, okay, $5 million. I need $5 million for the moon rock. And that's where I told you I went out and I asked authorities, is $5 million reasonable? And I was told it was. So then what do? Contact NASA. You got $5 million? No. Call Justice Department? No. Postal inspection? No. FBI? No. We didn't really want to bug with them too much because we don't like them coming in and stealing our cases. And then headquarters even called the CIA to try to come up with $5 million. Nobody came up with $5 million.
The thing,
And so I'm
wouldn't this be
sitting back there
considered?
going,
I'm sorry. Wouldn't this be considered to, even though it's from another country, wouldn't it be considered a national treasure and no one's willing to fund the recovery
yeah,
of it?
well, it was such a unique thing. And I think if we had more time, we might have sold it, but this was time sensitive. We had to come up with the money and prove that we had the money, and we weren't getting anywhere. So I called a local millionaire who gives to all kinds of good causes. And he was just like the Justice Department, CIA, and so forth. Did not think that was the best investment of his $5 million. And so I'm sitting back here going like, who can we contact? And then I remember my father, your grandfather, tell me that he really respected Ross Perot. He respected Ross Perot because he was pro-military and pro-American. I said, okay, the guy's pro-military, pro-American. So I called his company up in Dallas. And a few seconds, I'm talking to his personal secretary. And I'm floored. I'm talking to Ross Perot's secretary. And I told her what I needed. And she said, well, I'll tell Mr. Perot. Hang up the phone. Krieger's there in my office, kicking back on like, can you believe I got through to Ross Perot's secretary? How cool is that? Phone rings. Special Agent Joe Gutheinz, how can I help you? Hello, Joe. This is Ross Perot. How can I help you? I said, well, Mr. Perot, we're trying to get back a moon rock and we need $5 million in order to do that. No problem. I'm going like, wow, he really is the
More
real thing.
questions?
Yeah, no question. And the funny thing about Perot was he got his bank officials to get us a letter and everything else that we needed. But he actually would have been willing to go undercover, which I mean would have sold the case in a heartbeat. You see Ross Perot coming in there, you got to go, this has got to be real. Universally known. Everybody knew who Ross Perot was. But I knew two things. The first thing I knew that if Ross Perot got a paper cut, so much as a paper cut on this case, I probably would be looking for a new job, and my father would disown me. So
Didn't he run
I
for
said,
president, or am I mistaken?
yeah, he ran for president in 1992 as an independent. He was former at Annapolis. He was the class president, uh, shorter than me, and you know that I'm not the tallest guy, and just a super cool guy. And so, and again, he would have made my day. I could just see walking into what we when we met Rose and we met him at Tuna's
And this
restaurant. I'll tell you
this
about
this
that
was
in a
what year?
second. That was 1998.
So by this point, he had
So
already run for president. So everybody knew who this man was.
everybody knew who Ross Perot was. Everybody knew who Ross Perot was. Uh, um, he was a brilliant businessman. He was loved by a lot of people, even people that did not vote for him because they didn't think he had a chance. I think he got like 19% of the national vote.
Which
And
is
if you
good for
can
an
imagine
independent.
that. And people, Republicans blame him for Clinton winning in 1992. But just a bigger in life individual. And again, I could just see walking into meeting with Alan Rosen with him sitting next to me. He probably would have taken the thing over because I mean he had the ultimate type A personality. But it was very, very cool. So we got that letter to Rosen. That was kind of convincing. And then we agreed to meet. And we met at Tuna's restaurant in Miami. Um, Krieger and I flew in the day before. We were at South Shore, and we arranged a time to meet with him. We go in there, and we're a little bit early. And just to give you optics, I've got my gun in my belt behind my jacket. Rosen has, I mean, Krieger has his gun in his fanny pack. We have two customs agents parked a block away recording us, Dwight Weichel and David Atwood. And basically, we're sitting there negotiating this thing with him and what he called identified as his financial advisor. And so, bottom line, like he always did, he never believed we were. He always thought we might be special agents. He always talked about special agents kicking in the door. And I think the only thing that kept him going was the promise of $5 million. $5 million trumps personal security on that. And so in the conversation, Krieger and I are sitting there, and he says something to the effect, I'm half expecting Central or South American gunmen to come around the corner with AK-47s at any time. And as soon as he says that, a waiter drops a plate. And of course, the natural reaction is I'm slowly reaching for my gun, looking around. Krieger's, I'm sure, reaching for his fanny pack. And then we had to get and laugh about it and get back into character because we almost messed up. But great thing. So that night, Krieger and I go back to the hotel. We're comparing notes of the car before we get out. Phone rings. It's about 8 o'clock at night. He says, "Hi, this is Alan Rosen. Hey guys, I'm interested in doing business with you, but I still think you might be undercover agents, and I need proof that there really is a John's estate sales and you're the real thing. So this is what I want. I want not agents. I want 5 names of customers that I could talk to." So while Krieger was talking to him in the car, I get out of the car with another phone and start calling agents up and telling them, "Hey, you're going to have to pretend that you're a customer of John's estate sales and you buy collectibles and so forth." And told 5 agents this, and lo and behold, he checks us out. And it must have worked because the next thing you know, we're setting up a time and a place to produce the moon rock so that he's going to produce it in a bank vault. That he got to pick the bank, and we got to pick the bank official. But he wanted assurances that Krieger, a.k.a. John Marta, and myself, a.k.a. Tony Coriasa, were back in Houston when he produced the moon rock to a bank official in Miami. So he had our cell phone numbers. And somehow I think that gave him confidence. The only problem was, as you know, a cell phone number, wherever you're at, it's the same number.
Same number.
So he goes in the bank. We're in an oversight position. We got a customs guy in the bank. And as soon as he walks in the bank, we go down and we sit on his trunk while we're waiting for this to go down. He goes into the vault. Undercover customs agent follows him, produces the moon rock, and he seizes it. And all of a sudden, for the first time in history, we've got something brought back from space seized in a sting operation. So we later find out that underneath Krieger and I is the plaque. He took the rock off the plaque, and so we've got everything. We've got the moon rock, we got the plaque. Now we know it's Honduras, and we go from there. That day, I'm given the moon rock, and I'm told, to have it checked out. And so, fly off to Johnson Space Center, and you got to picture this. I've got my Glock underneath my coat. I'm walking around with a briefcase that looks real sinister that I put up, but at all times the lucite ball rock was in my right pocket. And I was literally walking around. I figured they'll steal my briefcase, but they may not think to steal the whatever I've got in my right pocket. And so I get back there, we get it tested, and sure enough, it's the real thing. It was from the Apollo 17 mission. And some time passes, and Dave Atwood comes back to Johnson Space Center, and he gets the moon rock, and he flies it back to Miami. One guy flying it to Houston, one guy flying it back to Miami. The only difference was that when he got off the plane, two teams of customs agents with jackets marched onto the plane and escorted him off the plane with their cameras going. So all of a sudden, now you got all this top security. And then there was a press conference where there were about 15 cameras and so forth. Krieger and I were still technically undercover, so we couldn't go to the press conference, but it was a cool thing. We had I talked to Schmidt, Harrison Schmidt. He was one of the astronauts on the Apollo 17 crew. I also talked to and met with Eugene Cernan, two very impressive individuals. And Eugene Cernan and Harrison Schmidt both communicated with the press conference when it was going down. A few years later, the moon rock and the plaque are all refurbished, looking cool. And I had just retired from NASA, and I was asked to fly up to Washington, D.C. for a presentation. And so the head of NASA and a full room full of dignitaries and myself were there, and I was brought to the front to tell them a little bit about what I just told you. And long story short, I was there when the plaque was given to the ambassador of Honduras, which was all symbolic, photographs and everything else. But then he gives the moon rock back to the head of NASA, who goes back with an astronaut. They fly to Honduras and present it to the president of Honduras. And now that moon rock is in a museum. Now, it's not over. It's not over by a long shot. Because then we have one of the strangest cases in the history of law enforcement. It was a forfeiture case. Alan Rosen, with a former customs guy attorney, is fighting to get the moon rock back. And so we have a case called United States of America versus one lucite ball containing lunar material.
So this is a different
moon
case?
rock. No, this is a civil case based on this stuff.
Okay, okay.
And the name of it is United States of America versus one lucite ball containing lunar material, a moon rock, and one 10 by 14-inch wooden plaque. That's the actual name of the case, that long, just like that.
It's a mouthful.
And so the judge ultimately rules that Rosen had no right to the moon rock. They had an expert come in from Honduras saying that this was the property of Honduras. It should never have been distributed. And a lot of people ask me, well, why wasn't this a criminal case against Rosen? Rosen is not the guy that would have stolen the moon rock. If there was a theft, it happened back in Honduras. Remember, President Lopez gets the moon rock from the Nixon administration.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you, is how did he get it?
It was presented to him. Whether it was, and I don't recall right now, I knew it one time, but either Nixon gave it or we had an ambassador give it, or what a lot of cases, the astronauts themselves would go to the countries and present the moon rock. But in one of those fashions, moon rock was presented to President Lopez. And in 1975, he was overthrown by General Melger. And Melger, uh, thanking all the colonels that supported him in his coup, gave him each a trinket. And I'm trying to remember the name. It was what was the name of this? Colonel Argosia, I believe it was. Argosia uh, gets this moon rock as like a thank you payment for supporting the coup. And everything's cool with this. And he's got it for years. And in 1994, Alan Rosen realizes that he has a moon rock. He starts to negotiate with him. And the colonel says, no problem. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to sell that to you for $1 million. Rosen looks into this and realizes that that is in fact a reasonable price, but he doesn't have $1 million. So in 1995, they negotiate the purchase of it for $50,000. And as a down payment, he gives them 10 grand and a refrigerated truck worth 15,000. Then we scoot up to 1996, and all of a sudden, Rosen comes up with another 5 grand. And at that point, a middleman flies from Honduras to the Miami International Airport and then meets with Rosen at Denny's there and gives him the moon rock, and Rosen gives the $5,000. And so, how did we get the customs involved? Whenever you bring in something of the value of a moon rock into the country, you have to declare it. And that moon rock was never declared. And so, when going back to the vault, when the moon rock was produced, the undercover customs agent hands him a seizure warrant and seizes the moon rock.
So technically, the illegal thing was just bringing it into the country.
Well, it was the legal thing was bringing in the country. As far as NASA was concerned, we wanted our moon rock back, and we
Yeah.
got the moon rock back, and Honduras got the moon rock back. And to be honest with you, the culpability, if any, was all in Honduras, and that was for Honduras to work out. But we were happy that we were able to get it back and present it back to the people of Honduras. Now it's in a children's museum down in Honduras.
Well, that's pretty cool. So kids can go and look at it and learn. 50,000. You got to steal for that.
And just to go back to one thing we mentioned, the other moon rocks. Before I retired, I tried to sell NASA into an effort to go after the missing moon rocks around the world, and couldn't do it. We just did not have the manpower. We had less than 100 agents for the entire agency. And so what I did was when I got out, I started teaching. And I actually had two of my colleges that I taught for had 1,000 students hunt down moon rocks all over the world. And they helped recover 78 moon rocks. And if you think about that, if you do the math, 78 times 5 million, that's a lot of money. And my three favorite cases are Colorado, West Virginia, and Missouri.
You want to
One
talk
other
about those
thing about
cases, or
one side story about Missouri that I thought was kind of funny. One of my students finds out that New Jersey's Apollo 17 moon rock was missing. And a story that goes national, New Jersey's missing their Apollo 17 moon rock. And so I get this professor contact me, and he says, I don't know about Missouri, but we have our Apollo 17 moon rock because my wife is a big official in the museum system. Next day, newspaper publishes a picture of their Apollo 17 moon rock. The only problem is it was their Apollo 11. It had multiple, what looks like rocks in the lucite ball, not one, which is the case for all the Apollo 17s. So I called the newspaper up, tell them, hey, you're wrong. And they do a retraction. They say, yeah, we don't, ultimately, they say, we don't know where the Apollo 17 moon rock is. And I get my students involved looking for the moon rock again. And we trace it back to Governor Kip Bond. We even contact his office in D.C. because now he's a United States Senator. And a few months later, after he leaves, about ready to leave office, they're cleaning out his storage up in D.C. And lo and behold, what do they find? The Missouri Apollo 17 moon rock. It goes back. I actually had somebody from the opposing parties, governors at the governor's office, call me and try to think out the fact that the governor, Kit Bond, had it. And of course, my thinking is he probably didn't know he did anything wrong, and there wasn't anything wrong because as soon as they found out the truth, they got it back.
I mean, to be fair, I would imagine most of these people aren't cleaning out their own office. They have staff that are doing that.
Well, yeah, but then they may have also had staff to put it in there in the first place. Like I doubt that Governor turned President Bill Clinton put the moon rock in his storage boxes. I'm sure that was a staffer and
Yeah.
very well the Kip Bond. I know that Governor Arch Moore gave his moon rock away to his law partner. I know that Governor Vanderhoof put his moon rock on his wall and kept it for 35 years.
No,
They
aren't
both
those
thought that was
crimes?
cool. Excuse me?
Aren't those crimes? Like,
What? I'll tell you what, Arch Vanderhoof, as soon as had a student by the name of Kevin Griffiths expose the fact that they were missing their Apollo 17 moon rock. He did a diligent search in Colorado. And there was a front page story exposing, reporting his findings. That day, looks up at the wall and says, oh, gee, and he turns it in.
okay.
With respect to the West Virginia moon rock, one of the my student Sandy Shelton had her phone number put in the front page of the newspaper, and so when the widow of the former partner of my client realized that her brother-in-law had it, she called Sandy. I called the brother-in-law. Brother-in-law described it to a T. I called the governor's office, and we got the moon rock back. And just of interest is in West Virginia right now, in their state museum, they have that moon rock, and next to it is a plaque dedicated to Sandy Shelton and my moon rock project.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's kind of neat.
So there were what 270 rocks given as gifts? Is that about right? Or
270. Yeah, and the last I checked, and some time has gone by, but there's still about 150 missing.
150 still?
150 missing. And I'll give you one other story. Canada's Apollo 17 moon rock. It's missing. Nobody knows where it's at. Then we do some background search, and we find out that a 13-year-old or 13-year-old boy wrote an essay before Apollo 17, and basically his essay won. He lied about his age. They fly him down to Kennedy Space Center, and he witnesses the launch of Apollo 17. Well, now he's the technical ambassador from his country for the purposes of the Apollo 17 moon launch. And so NASA sends him back the moon rock and the plaque. $5 million moon rock. Here you go. He says, oh, this is cool, and he apparently puts it under his bed. Then some months later, Canada realizes that, hey, where's the moon rock? They come, they get it. He did nothing wrong. They saw him a moon rock. Great. Uh, they go on a tour with that moon rock in like 78, 79. They think the moon rock's stolen. Everybody thinks it's stolen. My students start contacting people and so forth, and they find out that it's actually in museum storage. And this was 2009, and we were coming up to the anniversary of Apollo 11. And so we actually pressured the government in Canada and the museums to put that moon rock on display. And they finally did that and was put on display to commemorate the efforts of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin and going to the moon.
That is awesome. You imagine a museum would have an inventory system that would have caught that.
Okay, now that we're talking about missing moon rocks, let me just tell you about two that are missing that are personal favorites of mine. And
Okay.
if I go hunting for moon rocks, which someday I'm going to retire from my law firm, and my wife and I are going to go around the world looking for moon rocks. One is the Romanian Apollo 17 moon rock, and the other is the Spanish Apollo 11 moon rock. Spanish 11 moon rock was in the possession of the Franco family, fascists, right? The Romanian Apollo 17 moon rock was in the possession of the Ceausescu family. And they were, the husband and wife were both executed on Christmas Day, the
Oh,
Romanians. And their moon rock, which was really their country's moon rock, was sold at an estate sale. So somebody purchased the moon rock. So these two communist leaders in Romania, their moon rock was sold to a capitalist, which I always thought was great. With respect to Franco's moon rock, we get a call from a newspaper in Spain. Hey, look, we have reason to believe that the grandchild, I won't say gender, of Franco was trying to sell a moon rock in Switzerland. And we find out that they had two moon rocks that were missing. One was kept by their prime minister, who was assassinated, and his family finally turned it over to the Navy Museum. That was the Apollo 17. The Franco family had the Apollo 11 moon rock, and the Apollo 11 moon rock has never been found because after he tried to sell it, now the official story is, oh, we can't find it anymore.
no.
So Ceausescu, probably the worst dictator in the old Soviet Union, except for perhaps Stalin, and then Franco, the Franco family. Of course, he was the famous fascist that did not join with Hitler and Mussolini, and therefore was not destroyed in World War II.
Those would be interesting to go hunt down.
Yeah. Well, I also promised Malta, people that I know in Malta, that I'd go back. I've already offered $10,000 for the recovery of the Maltese Apollo 17 moon rock. And I offered $10,000 for the recovery of the Delaware Apollo 11 moon rock. In both cases, the 11 and the 17, the people that stole them, there was no security. They literally walked into the museum, picked it up, stole it, and walked away with it, and that was it.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I'm shocked like no one's reached out to you to do like a show or something of hunting
Well,
down.
I've done shows. Missing Moon Rocks in 2014 won an Emmy for a documentary, and that was about my Moon Rock project.
I worked on that
And
one. Yeah, I remember that.
yeah, and supposedly the filming is pretty much done. There's a movie called Operation Lunar Eclipse that has actually been filmed, but now they're peddling, trying to find out if somebody actually wants to air it. But that should be a pretty interesting project. That was an interesting project.
That would be cool.
Your aunt and I went down to Marshall Space Flight Center. They filmed down there, and we have this pictures of the two of us standing by a capsule. So kind of fun.
That's awful.
And also, there was a book. Trying to remember, it was by Clock KLOC, and it told the story about hunting for missing moon rocks as well.
It's very interesting, and there's so many different stories that you could dive into, and there's still so much to be left uncovered. If there's still, you said like 150 left, like there's a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
ground to cover there.
what I would love to do, my idea of a TV show, put $1 million out there, you list all the moon rocks that are missing, and the first guy to find one of those million moon rocks that are missing gets the $1 million. And kind of like the ultimate scavenger hunt, just send everybody out looking for it.
Yeah.
I mean, if people are going to go to the Fingus dump and start digging, trying to find a moon rock that's been buried for 20 years, they'll go to their local museum and see if maybe they got it sitting in a closet. And I think it'd be an interesting project and an interesting show.
It would. It would. I also think it'd be interesting to send someone to these different places and on the ground and film them as they talk to people and search for it. Like you can make a documentary series out of that.
But and again, looking for these things has been fun. I've enjoyed it. My students have enjoyed it. I have my students. Some of them are still on my Facebook page, and I've taught for a few years. They're still on my Facebook page, and we still talk about missing moon rocks, and that's was a passion to them. They tell me it was the best project they ever had in school. So, and a lot of them have got master's degrees now and PhDs, and I'm very proud of them.
That is awesome. I like that. It's insane to me that these weren't better taken care of. But I'm glad that they
Yeah.
started finding at least some of them.
Well, the bottom line is that in 2009, I'll give you one more story. I
Okay.
swear to God, you could sit around here and give story after story. My partners would probably fire me, but that's okay. Uh, the Cyprus Apollo 17 moon rock. Cyprus was missing its 11 and 17 moon rock. And it was pretty certain what happened. In 73 and 74, that nation was basically in a state of civil war, unrest. Part of the population is Turkish, part of the population is Greek Christian. And so there's a natural divide and tension. So in August of 1974, our ambassador to Cyprus was assassinated, a guy by the name of Davis. And we assumed that he gave the president of Cyprus the Apollo 17 moon rock. He assumed it. Cyprus assumed it. It wasn't true. In 2009, the Associated Press decided to piggyback on our moon rock project and do a global search for moon rocks. And so somehow I'm conversing with the Cyprus newspaper down there. And I said, hey, both the Apollo 11 and 17 moon rocks have been stolen from Cyprus or destroyed because there was fires and everything else. And about a couple of days later, I get a call from a source. He says, forget about it. He said somebody tried to sell the Apollo 17 moon rock back in 2006. And it was a relative of somebody that was stationed at the American embassy. See, when the ambassador was assassinated, they evacuated the embassy And the moon rock went with one of these young people. They're going like, ah, nice trinket. They tried to sell it. Then we pressured him in 2009 to return it to NASA. And in 2010, after going through attorneys in DC, they returned the moon rock to NASA, and NASA gave me a call and let me know that they safely got it back and sent me some pictures. The real story was that NASA did not return the moon rock for years to Cyprus because they did not want to return it to a country that was in its civil uh, distress between the Turks and the Greeks. The crazy thing is that I pressured, wrote op-eds, and finally, I think I embarrassed NASA enough, pointing out the fact that we were basically stealing the sovereign property of Cyprus, that they returned it to Cyprus.
So you helped them get their moon rock back.
They got their moon rock back. But I mean, I could go around the globe and I could tell you story after story, but I think we hit the limit on those.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was very interesting. Any last words you want to say before we finish today?
No, I just would say this to anybody watching. There are a lot of moon rocks out there. If you want to go out and find one, you're doing a public service to the young people. And I will tell you one other story.
Okay.
When I was looking for the value of this moon rock, I approached an astronaut that I knew. I said, "Hey, look, they're telling me that this moon rock is worth $5 million." He says, "I have no clue of the value of a moon rock." He says, "Honest to God, I have no clue. But I'll tell you the personal value that it has for me." So I'm listening. He said, "I was in a museum, and I believe it was at the Smithsonian." He said, "I was a young guy, always wanted to be a pilot, Navy pilot, Marine Corps pilot, whatever, but a pilot. I always wanted to do that. I start walking towards this NASA display, and I see this moon rock. And it immediately connected with me." He said, "And from that point on, I no longer just wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to be the ultimate pilot, an astronaut." And he did. And he became actually, he was in the shuttle phase, but he became a famous shuttle pilot and astronaut. And that moon rock was what triggered it for him. And I always tell my students the reason why we're not interested in people owning moon rocks, but rather governments, is that so some young people can have that same experience in a museum and can see a moon rock. Maybe they don't have any shoes on. Maybe they're poor in some third world country. But maybe that can trigger their imagination, and they too, they want to be an astronaut and literally reach for the stars. And so that is one of the things that's always motivated me in terms of finding moon rocks.
That's kind of profound. I really like that.
Well, anyhow,
But
Jonathan, you take care, and I wish you the best.
oh, thank you so much. You have a great day. Bye.
Take care.